Hey everybody, I'm Joshua Orro, the Mustang Prince, and welcome to Mustang Prince Orro Reports. And today, I've got something really big to share with you. If you may recall, back in summer 2019, me and my pal Daniel Guzman did a blog on Jon Favreau's live-action remake of The Lion King, and while most of it feels like a copy and paste version, I do give it credit for including a few new things and adding a few things to make it different. Also, I think the voice actors do a pretty good job, like Donald Glover, Beyonce Knowles, Chiwetel Ejiofor, Seth Rogen, John Oliver, and others. Also, a couple years before that, I did a blog on The Lion King 1.5, which told the story of Timon and Pumbaa during the events of the first Lion King film. And while part of it kind of clashes with an episode from the Timon and Pumbaa show, which was one of my childhood favorite Disney Channel cartoons, I still think this is a very fun movie. Plus, ever since the year 2024 began, I heard that the great King Mufasa will be receiving a live-action prequel with Lin-Manuel Miranda writing new songs. And I really hope this upcoming film will be as equally a hit as its 2019 predecessor. Anyway, in honor of Pride Month, Father's Day, and the 30th anniversary, I'll be sharing my thoughts on the very movie where the Lion King legacy began. So let's get started. Released on June 15th, 1994, the movie is The Lion King. And now, on for the plot of the movie. This film follows the adventures of a young lion cub named Simba, who cannot wait to be claimed King of Pride Rock, only to find himself in a life-changing situation when his ruthless and envious Uncle Scar conspires alongside the hyenas to overtake the kingdom and establish a dictatorship. Acquiring the advice from his old counselors Zazu and Rafiki, the help from his new friends Timon and Pumbaa, and the unexpected warning of a familiar face whilst discovering the path of love through his childhood friend Nala, Simba must unshackle the savannah from the reign of terror of Scar and return the natural order to the circle of life. So, what do I think? Well, this has got to be the biggest animated film of my early childhood, and it's one of the best ever made. And to further explain what I mean, let's move on to Mustang notes. Now, initially, The Lion King was supposed to be a non-musical, leaning towards a style similar to that of a documentary. George Schreiner, who had made his feature directorial debut with Oliver and Company, was hired to direct, with Roger Allers joining him soon after following his work as a story artist or head of story on Oliver and Company, along with The Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, and Aladdin. Allers brought in Brenda Chapman and Chris Sanders, whom had worked with him on Beauty and the Beast and Aladdin, to serve as head of story and production designer respectively. Linda Wolverton, who had just wrapped up work as screenwriter for Beauty and the Beast, wrote the initial draft of the screenplay for this movie, but following her departure from the project to write the libretto for the Broadway adaptation, Irene Michi and Jonathan Roberts were brought on board to finish and revise the script. 6 months into production, Schreiber left the project due to creative differences with Roger Allers, producer Don Hahn, and Brenda Chapman about changing it into a musical, and Rob Minkoff was hired to replace him in April 1992. Additionally, Beauty and the Beast directors Gary Trousdale and Kirk Wise were hired to perform some additional rewrites to the script and story. Throughout production, Allers, Schreibner, Minkoff, Hahn, Chapman, Sanders, and several other animators visited Kenya in order to observe wildlife and get inspiration for the characters and setting. Some were even invited to be sketched at Walt Disney Studios. After The Lion King was released, it received critical acclaim for its music, story, themes, and animation. With an initial worldwide gross of $763 million, it finished its theatrical run as the highest grossing film of 1994 and the second highest grossing film of all time behind Jurassic Park. It also held the title of being the highest grossing animated film until it was overtaken by Pixar's Finding Nemo. The film remains the highest grossing traditionally animated film of all time, as well as the best-selling film on home media, having sold over 55 million copies worldwide. It received 2 Academy Awards for Best Original Score for Hans Zimmer and Best Original Song for Can You Feel the Love Tonight, as well as the Golden Globe Award for Best Motion Picture, Musical, or Comedy. It is considered by many to be among the greatest animated films ever made, which me and many other Disney and animation fans agree. It also influenced a Broadway musical, 2 direct-to-video sequels, 2 animated TV shows, a fan-favorite level in the Kingdom Hearts game series, and a remake in 2019. Also, in 2016, the film was selected for preservation in the United States National Film Registry by the Library of Congress as being culturally, historically, or authentically significant. Now, when I was still very little, I remember hearing about The Lion King from a couple different promos which were featured on a few Disney VHSs like Aladdin, The Fox and the Hound, and The Muppet Christmas Carol. And I believe those promos were the very reasons why my parents took me to see it in theaters. And I was only 3 years old back then. And after seeing it on the big screen, I found it to be a very fantastic movie, even though there were a few things that were pretty scary and intense. Also, during that same time period, I got to watch the Circle of Life Disney Sing-Along VHS, I got to listen to the Lion King read-along cassette tape, and I got to see the Lion King Celebration Parade at Disneyland, which to me was the most amazing parade I've ever seen, with acrobats, dancers, and animatronics. Also, not long after graduating from my 5th grade year at Del Cerro Elementary, where Peggy Davis Dutcher was my teacher, I got to see the Lion King Broadway show at the Pantages Theater in Los Angeles with my mother, my sister Sabrina, my Aunt Debbie, my Aunt Karen, and 2 of my cousins, Nick and Katie. And during my college age in 2011, I got to see the Lion King in 3D with my Aunt Debbie, my late grandmother Joanne, and my goddaughter Elizabeth. Now, what are my thoughts on the animation? Well, to this day, the hand-drawn animation is fantastic. And I like that this was one of the few animated Disney films to use the CAP system in order to help simulate camera movements such as tracking shots, and it was used for coloring, lighting, and particle effects. Not only that, but the film also used a 3D computer program for the wildebeest stampede sequence. Fun fact, the wildebeest were multiplied into hundreds, cel-shaded to look like hand-drawn animation, and they were given randomized paths down a mountainside to simulate the real, unpredictable movement of a herd. To me, ever since I was 3 years old, that was the most intense and traumatizing scene in the entire movie, and the final climax at Pride Rock during a brush fire was really epic and thrilling. Anyway, aside from all that, I think the animators did a fantastic job with designing the African savanna of the Pride Lands, along with the lion's home of Pride Rock, the elephant graveyard which looks really spooky, and the jungle where Timon and Pumbaa live looks like a really fun and beautiful place where everything is Hakuna Matata. As for the story, well, I find it very interesting that it was inspired by two Shakespeare plays like Hamlet and Macbeth. And I like how it's a coming of age story where the main character has to learn to accept his responsibility and fate as future king, as well as learn to let go of past faults and learn the meaning of life. However, there are a couple flaws. For example, a few of the jokes are a bit flat to today's standards, and I heard that there were some personal things that happened while The Lion King was in development. For example, Frank Wells, who served as president of the Walt Disney Company ever since 1984, tragically died in a helicopter accident on Easter 1994, and Jeffrey Katzenberg resigned from Disney after The Lion King premiere to form DreamWorks SKG with Steven Spielberg and David Geffen due to Michael Eisner refusing to give him the job as the new Disney president. And now, let's talk about the songs, which were composed by Sir Elton John and Tim Rice. And to me, these songs are some of the greatest Disney tunes that I've ever known about during my childhood. However, for now, I'd like to talk about three of them. First is The Circle of Life, which is sung by Carmen Twilly with Lebo M doing the opening Zulu vocals. To me, this has got to be one of the best opening songs ever made, and I like how this song describes the delicate cycle, the natural world, and the balance of nature. Plus, my favorite part is when Rafiki presents baby Simba to all the animals of the Pride Lands, which really makes me well up in happiness, especially when I saw it in 3D back in 2011. Also, while that song is great, I also love the pop version sung by Elton John himself, which I think is equally as emotional as the film version. And I really find it really cute that it features a lion cub in the recording studio. Next is I Just Can't Wait to Be King, sung by a young Simba and Nala in order to distract Zazu, as well as to enunciate Simba's desires to become king. To me, this is my second favorite song in the whole film, and I also like that it was featured in Mickey's PhilharMagic at the Disney parks. Also, the things that I like about this song are the colorful visuals, and I think all the antics that the young cubs get Zazu into are really hilarious. Plus, I am kind of curious as to why these crocodiles got redesigned. The last song to talk about is the romantic song, Can You Feel the Love Tonight? To me, this song really is wonderful, and I can understand why it received an Oscar for Best Original Song of 1994. Plus, while Timon and Pumbaa's verses at the beginning and ending are pretty decent, I think Joseph Williams, the son of legendary film composer John Williams, does a great job as Simba's singing voice, while Sally Dworsky does a really beautiful job with Nala's singing voice. Also, I think Simba and Nala's relationship is really adorable, and I like the part where they roll down a hill and when they cuddle. Also, like with The Circle of Life, I think Elton John's version is really amazing, and I'll never forget the time when I got to sing this version for my voice class final back in 2011 during my college age. Plus, there's a version that I don't think a lot of people know about, which is sung by Arnold McCuller and Andrea Robinson. This version can be viewed on the Colors of the Wind sing-along video, and it includes romantic clips from not only The Lion King, but also several other Disney films as well. Anyway, now that we're done with Mustang notes, let's move on to the characters, voice actors, and their songs. Let's start with our main character, Simba, voiced by Matthew Broderick. But as a cub, He's voiced by Jonathan Taylor Thomas. As a young cub, Simba is adventurous, inquisitive, playful, and impressionable. He highly admires his father Mufasa, and he wishes to someday become a ruler as mighty as he is, spending as much time either learning the ways of a king or simply envisioning what life would be like with such power and self-esteem. But when Simba becomes a full-grown lion, his personality takes a slight shift. Because he believed that his father's demise was ultimately his fault, Simba feels unworthy of ruling the throne, hinting at signs of insecurity and low self-esteem, in addition to becoming hesitant to ever face his past. But thankfully, with some guidance from Rafiki, Simba learns that the past is very important, and it should be looked to as a means to admit his mistakes, but never as a reason to prevent oneself from moving on in life. And after Simba learned the real truth of his father's demise, he becomes more confident and self-assured. Also, during the Kingdom Hearts game series, Simba becomes a summoned ally for Sora in the first and third games, and he joins forces with the young Keyblade wielder as a party member in the second game. Next we come to his father, King Mufasa, voiced by the legendary James Earl Jones, best known as Darth Vader from the Star Wars franchise, along with Pinocchio and the Emperor of the Night, The Sandlot, Casper: A Spirited Beginning, the 2009 Jack and the Beanstalk movie, and Coming to America. To me, Mufasa would have to be the best father in not just Disney history, but also animation history, mainly due to his wisdom, and I like that he's kind-hearted and shows respect for all the creatures of the Pride Lands, even those who are perceived as lower than himself. And I like that he shows a playful side, like when he gives Simba a pouncing lesson. Also, if his family is ever endangered, Mufasa exposes his protective side, ready to throw himself into danger in order to keep those he loves safe. However, the one flaw with Mufasa is that he's a poor judge of character, unable to recognize Scar's treachery until it was too late. Plus, I think the part where Mufasa's ghost encourages Simba to return to the Pride Lands and take his place as the rightful king was both a haunting and a powerful scene. Next is Simba's childhood best friend and love interest, Nala, voiced by Moira Kelly. But as a cub, she's voiced by Nikita Kalam. As a cub, Nala is sassy, defensive of her own accomplishments, and she gives her best friend cheek when prompted. Plus, I think Nala is an encouraging friend. She's kind to Simba even when he makes an error, no matter what he says or does, and she maintains the friendship by grieving heavily when he supposedly dies. But as an adult lioness, she becomes more mature, practically built on persistence and responsibility, as well as being a fierce hunter and fighter. And upon finding Simba, she tries to speak sense into him, standing as his voice of reason with a cutting edge to her argument. Another thing that I like about Nala is that she makes a great new friend for Sora, Donald, and Goofy, like when she saves them from Scar and teaches them how to jump over a large chasm. Next is the Royal Major Domo, Zazu, a hornbill voiced by Rowan Atkinson, best known from the Mr. Bean series along with Johnny English, the 2002 Scooby-Doo movie, and the 2023 Wonka movie, which I should blog this coming fall. Zazu is charged with upholding order within the kingdom, though he is rarely taken seriously due to his diminutive size and fragile temper. What I like about Zazu is that he's undoubtedly loyal to the king, and he proves his usefulness on numerous occasions. For example, as the king's eyes and ears, Zazu knows all and tells all, especially when trouble arises. Plus, I thought the part where Zazu tells Simba and Nala that they're destined to be married was kind of obvious. Next we come to Rafiki, voiced by the late Robert Gulliam, who also voiced Mr. Thicknose in the 8th Land Before Time movie. Rafiki is a mandrill who serves as a shaman and royal Mejusi of the Pride Lands. In my eyes, while Rafiki doesn't have a lot of screen time, he is an eccentric but wise sage who has a deep connection to magical and spiritual elements. My favorite scenes involving Rafiki is when he draws a painting of Simba at his baobab tree, and later when he adds a full mane to the painting after finding out that Simba is indeed alive, thanks to some dust, pollen, and petals in the air, where he teaches Simba about learning from the past and not running from it, where he tells Simba's friends that he's heading back to Pride Rock, and where he uses his Baccarat stick to fight the hyenas. Next we come to Timon and Pumbaa, voiced by Nathan Lane and Ernie Sabella. To me, ever since I was little, I found these guys to be the funniest characters in the whole movie, and they're some of my favorite comic relief sidekicks ever, next to Olaf, Genie, and several others. Also, as I said earlier, their animated series, which ran from 1995 to 1999, was one of my favorite Disney Channel cartoons. Plus, I like that they take in Simba and teach him the ways of Hakuna Matata, which happens to be one of my favorite Disney songs of all time, ever since I saw the promo, which showed Nathan and Ernie singing it at the Disney studio. A couple of my favorite scenes involving Timon and Pumbaa is when they sing "The Lion Sleeps Tonight" before Pumbaa gets distracted by a rhino beetle and gets chased by Nala, the scene where they distract the hyenas by performing a hula, and when Pumbaa charges at the hyenas when they call him a pig. Next on our list are the Laughing Hyenas, Bonsai, Shenzi, and Ed, voiced by Cheech Marin, Whoopi Goldberg, and Jim Cummings. These three were banished from the Pride Lands on account of their destructive eating habits, forcing them to take refuge in the elephant graveyard. They also form an alliance with Scar in hopes to usurp the lions and overrun the Pride Lands, thus allowing themselves and the other hyenas the freedom to eat as much as they desire. In my opinion, they were the scariest part of the film when I was little. However, nowadays, I see them as silly and not to be taken seriously. Also, believe it or not, my mom once told me that if Musical Theater Village could ever do The Lion King, which is in reality impossible due to the production size, I could make a good Ed due to my crazy laughing. Anyway, aside from chasing Simba and Nala, they also help carry out Scar's evil plan to kill Mufasa by triggering a wildebeest stampede. But nearing the end of the movie, after Scar is defeated, the hyenas close in and devour him after overhearing him say that they were the enemies. Finally, we come to Simba's evil uncle, Scar, voiced by Jeremy Irons, who got to be in Aragon, The Pink Panther 2, and Batman v Superman. Now, this character has been regarded as one of Disney's greatest and darkest villains, next to Maleficent, Ursula, Jafar, Frollo, and others. In my eyes, Scar is a cold, ruthless, brutal, and merciless lion whose goal is to be the ruler of the Pride Lands. His first attempt was to trick Simba into going to the elephant graveyard, but when that fails, he and the hyenas engineer a wildebeest stampede meant to kill both his brother and his nephew, and after Mufasa's death, Scar blames Simba for the incident and tells him to run away and never return, which would later, in the words of the Artful Dodger, come back to haunt him. As the years pass after taking the throne, Scar becomes deluded and shows no concern for the lives of his subjects or for his family. Plus, I think Scar was very arrogant and stubborn when he rejects Sarabi's idea of leaving Pride Rock in order to survive, and he was abusive when he ruthlessly strikes her for comparing him to Mufasa. Plus, I thought the part where he pushes Simba against the ledge of Pride Rock was very devious and intense, and the part where he kicks hot embers into Simba's eyes was a very cheap but sneaky move. Also to note, Scar has one of the best villain songs in all of Disney history, Be Prepared. And to me, this song is just so nasty, villainous, and devious. However, there is one part in this song that's a bit controversial due to it being an homage to the Nazis. Also to note, while Jeremy Irons does do a good job singing, after Scar yells out during this bit, it switches to Jim Cummings and he sings throughout the rest of the song, mainly due to Jeremy losing his voice. But overall, it's a great villain song to listen to. And now for my final words. Overall, The Lion King has got to be one of the best animated films in Disney history. The animation is amazing, the songs are fantastic, the characters are likable and memorable. Also, I like how the story takes inspiration from a couple of Shakespeare shows like Hamlet and Macbeth, and I like the film's moral of letting go of past faults, learning from your mistakes instead of running from them, and learning the meaning of life around you. To me, this is an animated masterpiece that everybody should watch. And if I ever gained a family of my own in the future, I would definitely share this movie with them. And it's for that very reason why I give The Lion King a perfect rating of 100%. Well, that's all for now. Be sure to join me next time as we take a look at the second Lion King movie. To be continued.